The Bulls have clearly made a change of direction with the roster this offseason, going much younger. But the question is, have the Bulls done enough to not still be living in two worlds where they're not exceeding at either one? We'll talk a little bit about that, plus Jerry Reinsdorf comments, and dive a little bit into the mailbag. All that and more right after this.
You are now tuned in to Chicago Bulls Central, your number one place for all Chicago Bulls news and content.
What's going on, Bulls fans? Welcome to another episode of Chicago Bulls Central, your number one spot for everything Chicago Bulls related. I'm the host there, Haize, but more importantly, you guys can follow the channel at Bulls Central Pod on every social media platform we happen to be on. With that being said, let's go ahead and get into this content, y'all. And I want to start off with this, man. So I was thinking this morning, getting this episode together, and just thinking about that, where the Bulls sit right now, and the difference, like especially coming out of yesterday's episode where I asked you guys, how do you feel that the Bulls are going to exceed or not to the expectations of 28.5 wins? And it's made me realize again, no, not realize, it's not that we haven't already kind of realized this is again where we are, that the Bulls still sit in two different places and have not really exceeded in either one of them. And that's where the Bulls have been the last 3 years, right? Being this team that was trying to compete, being this team that wanted to bet on continuity, and still, have young players that they were developing. And we never were really a contender. We never really developed those players very meaningfully because we weren't giving them and putting them in certain minutes and scenarios because we were more focused on playing our vets. It took for Zach LaVine to go down with injury, DeMar to miss some time, basically, right, to really kind of change that. And even though Kobe White came into last season as the starting point guard, when you look at the early games of that season, it was going to pretty much be the same. It was Zach and DeMar, and Kobe wasn't getting a lot of shots. It took almost for Zach LaVine to start. He started showing it a little bit before Zach permanently went down with injury, but it took a little bit of that before, Kobe really started blossoming. And so once again, this team, and not because of the pecking order, I think having, Josh Giddey be the passer that he is at the actual point guard position, even though he's going to have a high usage rate, it puts you in a lot different position when it's like DeMar getting, or having that high usage rate, right? Because Josh Giddey's looking to finish it on assists. DeMar is finishing it on scoring and some assists, right? But this team is still, even with going younger, they're still not good enough. Now we don't even know for sure if they're good enough to even compete for the play-in. We knew at least the last couple of seasons the Bulls were going to be competing for the play-in spot. The question was were they going to be able to avoid that and make the playoffs? This team now is at a spot where you've gone younger. You've kind of kept a lot of the limitations that you've had with three-point shooting, shot blocking, rim protection is still one. You've addressed it a little bit with a Jalen Smith, but we still haven't seen the number of minutes or the frequency of him really guarding the rim or being a rim protector to really show that. And so you've changed the makeup of this team. Make no doubts about it. Going from a player like DeMar DeRozan to Josh Giddey is a considerable change for your team, and it should be a considerable change for the way that the Bulls play on the offensive side of the ball. But now we still have defensive limitations, right? You're looking at that starting lineup. Patrick Williams is clearly the only player that can be close to a plus defender. Kobe White, I think he may eventually get there. He's been a lot more active defensively, especially off ball. That's been rising over the last couple of years. He grew as an on-ball defender last year. You got Zach LaVine, who has shown a little bit, but has never really done it consistently because it comes down to effort. Josh Giddey is not really the switchable defender regardless. He's going to play pretty well at times, but still this team, and you got Nikola Vucevic, which is teams can exploit the mismatch there by just forcing the switch. And then coming off the bench, we got Ayo Dosunmu. He's a very damn good defender. Modest Musalis is growing as a defender. He's not good on ball yet. Some weak side things, playing in pass lanes with his length are okay, right? And it's so, I don't know, man. This team is just, once again, we're looking at this team that is not good enough or bad enough either way. This team isn't bad enough to where you can see them clearly being a bottom 10 team in the league, even though some you could project that, but it could very well go a different way. This team isn't really good enough to win a playoff series. Even the Bulls fans that think that this team is going to win 40 games or not, they're not going to beat the top teams in the Eastern Conference. They're just not, right? We're not shaped up. We haven't been around long enough. They have more continuity. They have more depth. They have more balance to their roster in a lot of those cases, right? Let's just go through it real quick. Not beating Boston, not beating New York. Even with Milwaukee and their issues, they're not beating Milwaukee, right? Especially if they go into isolation. We got nothing to slow down Giannis. Bobby Portis kills us every time, so does Brook Lopez, right? The Cleveland Cavaliers, if they're fully healthy, hell no, it's not even there. The Orlando Magic, I even got the Magic over the Bulls at this point, right? The Indiana Pacers, listen, that team with Ben Mathurin being fully healthy, taking a step up, right? Still being a young team, not getting much of Pascal Siakam there. Listen, yeah, like Philadelphia, there's a lot of teams to put ahead of the Bulls, and so the Bulls are not bad enough. They're not good enough, right? I'm sorry, this Bulls team. I've seen people, and especially after yesterday's episode, say things like, "Oh, well, the three-point shooting can be pretty okay. You're replacing DeMar DeRozan with Zach LaVine." Yeah, and we had Zach LaVine on the scene for the last few years. Where have we ever been more than an average three-point shooting team? Kobe White's a decent pull-up three-point shooter. Yes, he did that. He's been here for years. Ayo Dosunmu grew as a three-point shooter last year. Yeah, so did Alex Caruso and Ayo Dosunmu. We still were a bottom three-point shooting team. Right? Well, bottom of the pack as far as percentage and volume, right? And some part of that may go to Billy Donovan in this offense as well. I don't want to take that away, but ultimately this Bulls team is not bad enough either. I mean, not good enough, not bad enough. They don't have the type of depth that you look at a team that maybe doesn't have a star and you say, hey, this team's depth or this team's fit, right? Now, does that change over the course of the season? That's what the Bulls are hoping for. But we could once again be that team that for the next few years, we just sit in the middle. Now, this season is more unique, right? In the fact that we're focused on, can we be a bottom 10 team only because of the San Antonio Spurs holding our draft pick if it's anything higher than in the top or lower than in the top 10. So that adds a little bit of a different wrinkle. If the Bulls going forward, let's take this season out, right? If the Bulls are a middle of the pack team for the next 3 years after this, I'm just saying if, at least they will have their own first round picks for those times. So sometimes maybe they get lucky and they move up in the lottery. Maybe they have some bad years or whatever where the pick is around 13, right? They have to really scout very well to get good talent there. So, there's that aspect that to the contrary of what the team has been the last 3 years, where that team has been middle of the pack and those first round picks have gone elsewhere to the Orlando Magic and to the other teams, right? All right, you can make a case for that. So maybe if you are middle of the pack for the next few years, it's not as bad because you're younger, you're developing, and you're having your own draft picks come in outside of the one that you owe to the San Antonio Spurs. Cool. All right, you try to sell me on that. Maybe then you're going to try to sell me on, hey, Haize, this is going to be a team that has the average age of 23 years old, that is going to be competing for a playing spot. We're going to be fighting to win. We're going to be putting these players in a position where they're going to grow and develop their games. And through that, we're hoping that we're going to find a way to be able to compete or whatever else because of the nature of how deep this team is and the fact that we're growing as young pieces. All right, cool. But then you got to look at the young pieces you have. A lot of teams that go younger, right, have a lot of lottery picks on that team to where then they're trying to develop that lottery level talent. The Bulls have Modest Bucilis. The Bulls have Patrick Williams. And then they have a bunch of other low first-round picks in Dalen Terry or a second-round pick in Julian Phillips. And while these players have their own promise, you can't really sell us on like they have this superstar upside as if you could. That doesn't mean that they would either, but if you could have had a couple of years of drafting top 5, top 8, something like that, and you're selling us on, hey, we're developing these guys and we think that they have that upside of trying to be stars. You got Kobe, right? And I'll throw him in that as well. And hopefully this development aspect comes around for the Bulls. But right now, the Bulls are still living in two worlds yet again. They just have changed the makeup and made it look a little bit different. And to that, I ask this, right? And this is the one thing, is that by not fixing some of the issues with this team, didn't fix rim protection, didn't fix three-point shooting, defense theoretically right now on paper got worse, right? All right, cool. You're selling us on developing. All right, you want to develop these pieces. Have you even created the right environment to develop these guys? One could say Dan Craig wants Unseld Jr., player development department. We're getting there, right? Another side, you can look at it and say, well, Billy Donovan is a coach that he's going to double down and rely on his veterans, which means Zach LaVine and Nikola Vucevic are still going to be getting a huge amount of the shots here, which means that even though you've gone younger, maybe Patrick Williams doesn't get more than the 8.5 shots that he's been getting. Maybe Dalen Terry doesn't get more opportunity coming off their bench because you still got a Torrey Craig there. Maybe Julian Phillips doesn't get that for the same reason, right? Maybe these players just aren't good and you've picked the wrong time to go young and developing where your chance to have a top 10 pick is probably going to pass you by because you still got players that are going to have this team at a certain level, and then you don't have lottery level talent outside of Modest Bucilis recently to develop. So there's a lot of things here. right? And the thing that I'm most concerned about, it isn't whether the Bulls are bad or whether the Bulls are great. At the end of the day, let the story tell that the chips are going to fall where they may. I can sit up here on this podcast and this microphone every single day and complain about it, and it doesn't mean shit until Jerry Reinsdorf, AK, and Eversley give a damn as much as I do, right? But just being in the middle, having your straddling the fence again, right? Trying to be on both sides of the fence. Those are the type of things that lead a franchise to just continue to be mediocre for years. And Bulls fans don't deserve, Bulls fans don't want, hell, none of us should want it, just to be just in the middle of the pack. And while I think, I've called it copium, I think a lot of us are coping with the fact that this team is probably going to be bad this season. Now, how bad? Again, I'm not saying bottom 10 bad, but even the people that are squinting their eyes and trying to look at this Bulls team and say this team could win 40 games for a team coming off a team that just won 39 games and has gotten, I'm sorry, I hate to tell you guys, yes, this team has gotten worse. This team has gotten worse. Now, that's on paper as of right now. We'll see how things develop, but things have gotten worse. But you got some promising pieces. I didn't mention Josh Giddey in those promising pieces, a young 21-year-old player who's been top 10 in triple-doubles every year that he's been in the league, and hopefully he can take his game up to another level as well. But there's a lot of hope. And the thing where it comes down to it, Bulls fans, the hope hasn't paid off a lot for us in recent years. It just hasn't. The hope has gotten us nothing but disappointment for a while. And maybe there is a little bit of that still lingering, and that's why there's this pessimism in me. But I just don't think that the Bulls have made moves clearly in either direction to where we can feel confident about either. From people that want to see the Bulls keep their top 10 pick, can't feel super confident in it. For the people that think that this team could win 40 games, how confident are you in that, really? You may be able to think that this team can do it and hope that they can do it. And I forgot, hope that you're right. But how confident are you? Are you adamantly coming into the season and saying, this is a team that's going to win 40 games, right? I don't think you can realistically just confidently say that. You can say that you hope, but, that is for what it is, right? This front office continues to kind of just meander. And that's where I sit, and that's why I have a problem with the team. It's not because they aren't as good as I want them to be. It's not because they aren't a championship contender. It takes time and it takes development to get there. And maybe we start seeing that vision. But as it stands right now, I don't necessarily see it as clear as I'm sure the Bulls would want us to. And that is a problem within of itself. But, hopefully this is all for naught. Hopefully I sit here and I'm at the end of the season, at the midway of the season, we're talking about a Bulls team that has really, really excelled considerably. And if we're talking about that, I'm going to be one of the biggest ones to celebrate here for our Chicago Bulls because we deserve that team. We deserve that young, scrappy team. And I would love to see a new rendition of the young Bulls. Like, I would love to see that, right? That this team could start making the city of Chicago believe in them again. But then you got the reported. I want to say clearly reported because we don't know for sure if Jerry Reinsdorf said this or not. Seems like a bunch of hearsay. But of course, it's gotten people riled up because of the way. I think when you have an owner that he's already said before he'd trade the 6 championships for the Bulls for one. Now he did say that for one White Sox championship. But then you have the things that came out that said that in a recent, he was addressing employees and they asked what mattered more, the Bulls winning or the Sox winning. He said the Sox, right? Now, I get it why those comments are going to rile up the fan base. Believe me, I 100% get it. I'm not trying to say that you guys are crazy for being riled up, but we know this about Jerry. If you've been a Bulls fan for a while, this comment didn't even that's why I didn't do a breaking news episode on it. I wasn't in a rush to talk about it. I didn't lead out of this or Locked on Bulls talking about this specifically because it just doesn't matter. Like Jerry Reinsdorf, I need everybody to understand this, right? The Bulls, Rod Thorne drafted Michael Jordan, and then Jerry Reinsdorf took over. Jerry Krause was the architect of every Chicago Bulls championship team. Every reason why. And the reason why that Jerry Reinsdorf was able to do that is because Jerry Reinsdorf cared more about winning than he cared about how much the Bulls fandom or even the players liked him. Now, he was very successful. 6 titles out of that. Now, towards the end, Jerry Krause did start wanting it to be about him, and that's where you start like you either die a hero or you live long enough to see yourself become the villain. Jerry Reinsdorf was the GM for the Bulls long enough where he started becoming the villain because he wanted everybody to realize, I did this. I did that. I need my credit, right? And that's when you start putting yourself there instead of your talent. That's why the dynasty ended the way that it ended. But make no mistake about it, we didn't win 6 championships because of Jerry Reinsdorf. We won 6 championships because of the talent that Jerry Krause was able to put around Michael Jordan, because he was an architect and was actually smart in team building. He moved off of players at the right time for several occasions, right? He's able to get players in here that were able to seamlessly fit in with Mike and Pippen at that point and develop those guys, right? Jerry Krause is the reason. That's why when people complain about ownership and where the Bulls are, I tell you guys all the time, this is the same ownership fucking group that we've had. And it takes a GM that's smart, that develops, that drafts well over time, that is super intelligent and more focused on winning for the Bulls to have success. John Paxson, before Gar Forman came here, the reason why the Bulls were able to have their success was that he drafted well over years. And look, when you look at that team getting the number 1 overall pick, that team was not bad enough to get the number 1 overall pick. They got lucky in the lottery, were able to add Derrick Rose to something that they had built over years well, and then that was the next closest time we got to winning a title, right? You need a GM that is smart. You need a GM that has a vision. You need a GM that is able to eye talent. Jerry Reinsdorf was never the reason why the Chicago Bulls won a title, and he will never be the reason why the Bulls, if they ever get close to winning another one, he won't be the reason then either. So while, yes, the comments from ownership suck to have an owner that says that, but we knew this. We knew this. This is nothing new. It's not going to change. This is the way Jerry's always been. This is the way Jerry is always going to be. And until the GM, the president of basketball operations, AK and Eversley, care more about winning than anything else, meaning that I don't care about, listen, if some of our ex-players hate us because they didn't want to get moved when we had to move them, I got to do what's best. Everything has to be built around getting us to a title. They said those things, but they have not done them yet. And that's why I give a lot, like when people say and bring up ownership, I'm still like, no, AK and Eversley are the ones that get the most of my vitriol. Because not to say that I don't think that they can't fix it, right? But you got to care more about winning than anything else to get there. And you got to have somebody leading your team that does that. That's my opinion. You guys can let me know how you feel down below. With that said, we got one voicemail to get into because the voicemail bag has been filling up with this and Sky News. The one that we have today is from Reginald.
Hey, this is Reginald from Columbus, Georgia. I just want to comment on your take on the Lakers Bulls trade suggestion over the Boots. Not gonna lie, even though I want Jared Vanderbilt on the Bulls team, I think he's a great addition. I don't really like the trade because I don't think the logo is ready to be like the primary backup center. And even though I like what I saw from James Smith, I'm not sure he could be the starting center for the Chicago Bulls right now. I mean, if Drummond was still on the team and it was Drummond, Smith, and Leach, and you had to make a move, and that offer was made, then yeah, I'd be all right with it because those 3 second-round picks is a good deal. And when it comes to moving off the contract, I really would have preferred they buy out Devon Carter and to move off of the team, but it's Bulls. It's Jerry Reinsdorf. They're not just going to eat a salary if they don't have to. So the trade rumor as is, I agree with you. I think it's better to just keep Boots for right now until something better comes along. But that's just my opinion. And also, when it comes to Billy Donovan ready for the rebuild, I mean, he doesn't have a choice. I mean, you all saw where consistency got us, and it was mediocrity. He wants to be consistently mediocre. But, hopefully he's zealous. The team they got around him, the super coaches, can develop them the right way that we haven't seen Bulls do. But I have to see it before I put the support behind it. See what these guys can do when it comes to player development. Hoping for the best, but not expecting miracles and great one. Opinion.
All right, Reggie. So I get what you're saying on the trade. I'm not going to focus a lot on the trade. I want to focus on a couple of things that you did say there, though. Adama Sanogo, you said that you don't think he's ready to be a backup in the NBA. Here's what I'll say to that. He's thrived in everything at the G League. And if he does that yet again this season, I would even say if he even starts off at some point, and this is where the Bulls fell out. This isn't towards you, but this is where the Bulls have failed at before priorly, is that when a player shows that they excel at the G League level, at some point you got to give him a shot at the NBA level. because they're not going to learn anything else in their craft if they're just out there dominating the G League level of competition. You eventually have to bring them up to the NBA level to see what they can bring at that level so that you can see if you have a player out of them. And I think at some point, by the end of this season, if Adama has another season like he did last year, there's no reason to just leave him there withering away in the G League. At that time, it's time to give my boy an opportunity to come up to the NBA level and to see what he can bring. That's what it is. Now, as far as buying out Javon Carter instead of cutting Batum, they're not cutting, and because Javon Carter has no reason to give up any money on the deal, he has no incentive, right? Keep in mind, a buyout isn't just a team coming in and saying, hey, we're going to buy out your contract. We're going to give you 10 of this $18 million you have left. Peace out. No, a player has to agree to a buyout. They have to agree to give up some money. Javon Carter isn't in a place, especially with this play last year, to give up any money. So it's probably not going to happen. And this is the Bulls. They aren't going to eat that full contract just to be able to waive him to keep a player with a non-guaranteed deal. They're just not. Now, if Batum last year had showed like some huge upside, maybe they'd be willing at that point, but he didn't get that. He didn't do that in the time that he played, and then his season ended early with injury. So those are things that play into that. As far as like giving up Nikola Vucevic, I think you have to remember that if the Bulls do get to a point of moving Vooch, it may not be because, oh, we have somebody better to come in and replace him. It may be because of there's nobody better to replace him. Let's take advantage of the market value that we have for him now, and then maybe even it prioritize you keeping your pick. That's some things to look at there, but great voicemail there, Reginald. Great way to end the show. Thank you guys for tuning in. Make sure you guys are following the show at Bull Central Pod. You can send us any feedback, questions, comments, concerns. BullCentralPod@gmail.com. Lastly, if you want to leave a text message and our voicemail for the mailbag, the number to do so, 773-270-2799. We are the number one spot for everything Chicago Bulls related, but that's thanks to you guys. And like I like to end every episode on, go Bulls. Love you guys. See red if you can, y'all. Peace.
This has been a presentation of the Break Media.